3:05. I think this is a topic of special interest to many of us that are trying to navigate the uncertainties of what I suppose lockdown has placed upon us, and also what the church looks like in the midst of it all. So today we've got a special guest presenter here today in the form of Andries, and I'll introduce him shortly. But before we do that, this is meant to be a discussion. So at any point in time where you feel the need to ask a particular question of Andries, please, I think we're all familiar with how Zoom works in the functionality. So if you can raise your hand, and then we'll pause at the appropriate time to allow you the platform to actually ask a question. And then hopefully it will be addressed and answered by Andries. Before I hand over to him specifically, and before I pray, just to give you some background to Andries is, and he can share a little bit more about himself. So he's a graduate of theology at the Heidelberg College, and I think for about 3 years or so was involved in what we would regard as traditional pastoral ministry. But I think his audience now is bigger. His intention is to, I suppose, spread the gospel through using the means of social media. And we've invited him here this afternoon to actually give us some insights around the practicalities as well around how we can become social media missionaries. And he'll be sharing more about himself and also some more content as well as we go along. And so I encourage you to ask as much as you can. I know this is some grounds that we would like to, I suppose, win for Jesus on social media. There's lots of negative things out there as well. Yeah. So the more territory we get for the master, the better. So we're here to learn as much as we can. But before we do that, let us just bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we just want to say thank you for the blessings that the Sabbath brings, and for this opportunity that we have to meet on this virtual space to discuss how we can better serve you and your church. And so we ask that in a very special way that you will come and take a seat among us, that your Holy Spirit will come and abide with us, dear Father, that you will be with every heart, and be especially with Andries as he facilitates and as he leads, dear Father God, this afternoon. We ask that in a very special way that we may truly come away from this experience encouraged and inspired and more equipped to do our Father's business. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Andries, over to you.
Thank you so much, Leon. Okay, I want to ask you guys to get your questions ready, the ones that you already have. Okay, I'm going to do like a short introduction and just sort of like just to kind of break the ice or whatever. But get your questions ready, and then I'm going to open it up for questions or however way this will work. But basically, okay, so I want to start with this. About a year ago, it's roughly about a year ago, I had this crazy thought just pop into my mind one day as I was busy working. The thought was twofold. Like, what if they one day just locked down all the borders and you couldn't fly anywhere? That was the one thought, and with it came the other thought. Imagine if under such circumstances there was this Adventist flash mob of sorts that just started populating the internet with YouTube channels and, you know, and other social media platforms as well. And so this thought like came, and I thought about it for a while, and it was like, what? This is crazy. I mean, that would be good because then we can actually develop a presence. But I sort of like just, you know, let it go. And I would never in my wildest dreams imagine or dream to be sitting here a year later and actually having this discussion or this discussion group, etc. So yeah, this is really crazy. I won't say it's a dream come true because it's a dream I never had. It was just a thought I had that came and went. Okay. So with that out of the way, as Leon said, I was in ministry. I pastored for 3 years. It was from 2015 and then 15, 16 and 17. And then I got challenged. It's a very long story, but I was really challenged in the sense that I felt I wasn't really making an impact and finding a space or finding my own voice, as it were, in ministry, my own ministry. I wasn't really developing that. And I felt that maybe the pastoral ministry, as it is today, was not allowing that for that to be developed, like especially with this social media thing in mind. So it's kind of like I went out of the ministry, excuse me, saying that, listen, I'd really like to still work with people. I'm not cross with the ministry. I'm not cross with the conference. I'm not leaving for doubtful reasons, etc. I'm just really challenged, and I want to find a way of ministering to people on social media. And I'm not sure that the ministry will sort of like plug into that completely. And I think that's a bit of a like a very abbreviated version of it. But that's kind of like where I came from. I left ministry saying to people, listen, I'm going to one day start my own YouTube channel, and I really want to work towards that, etc., etc. But something that I want to touch on first in today's discussion is I think when I look back at the past 2 years, 2.5 years that I've been out of the ministry, have really come to the forefront for me. And this is this concept of I want to call it self-preparation, but it's basically when God prepares your heart for ministry. I think that was something that I can clearly see that God has been working powerfully, over the past couple of years, but especially in the last couple of weeks, for me personally. And so Leon asked me, he said, listen, okay, let's talk about sharing with the congregation how we can do this, ministering to people on social media, but also how we can do it in a way that is really meaningful. Okay, and those are two things that I had in my focus. I was really searching for a meaningful way to share the gospel. So and with that, he asked, listen, okay, but digital discipline must also be covered, because now we are ministering on a social media platform, and right next to your video that you're sharing about the gospel or whatever else it may be, are so many other tempting videos to watch. Like you can binge watch series and all kinds of stuff, etc. So we got to cover this concept, and I want to emphasize the concept of preparing yourself, but I don't want to do it in a way or give you the idea that it's just this kind of self-help situation where you just help yourself and you just go and do something that you set your heart or your mind on. It must really be an experience of emptying of self, and that's what I have found it to be for myself. When I read Spirit of Prophecy, I can clearly see how she speaks to that of this emptying of self, so that God can work and indicate to us what it is that He would have us communicate to others. So, okay, before we get right into that, I want to open it up if there are any questions thus far. Questions, as I said, questions that you've brought to this, and you've said, listen, okay, we're going to have this discussion this Sabbath, but I have these questions, whether it's going to be discussed or not, I just have these questions. So questions like that, maybe we can just voice them now, and I can jot down as many as possible, or we can just keep a list of them or whatever. But I just want to hear your questions so that I can sort of like start to think of maybe covering those as we go by. And so just so that I could just get an idea. Are there any questions that you guys have coming to this?
If you could indicate by raising your hand, and then we'll acknowledge you so that we all don't sort of speak at the same time and become incoherent around the questions. Okay, so Joey's literally lift up a hand.
Yes.
So Joey, you can go first.
I can't find the button.
No problem. We do see your hand, so please go ahead.
Okay. No, it's not a question. I just wanted to mention that we should also explore, apart from the mainstream media, so to speak, on the social platforms like YouTube and Facebook. But there's also other similar platforms, for instance, like minds.com, where there's not so many adverts yet that can distract you. So, and I think there are more. So if we can just explore that too, and basically shoot wide.
Yeah. I think I'm going to quickly speak to that while the others are still sort of like getting ready or whatever, and then we can maybe go on. What I was thinking, coming to this, there's a whole gamut of social media platforms that we can talk about. I mean, we can literally spend the whole afternoon just talking about that. So what I was thinking of doing was, my approach was sort of like in a total different angle, is to say, listen, okay, which social media platform? You get the mainstream ones, like I just mentioned, but then you whatever platform you see that will voice your, or that will communicate your message, or that will make your ministry possible, that's the one that you should be looking into, for those purposes. So yes, we will talk about social media platforms, but it's going to be from that perspective. It's going to be from the perspective of how it's going to communicate your message. If you don't find that this platform is working for you, for your specific kind of ministry, then, pass on and go and find something that will work. And I am by no means an expert on all of the different ones and how they work. I mean, I just know the the basics, the bare basics of some of them. But I think it's for everyone to find whatever works for you. Like what you find that, listen, this is really just making an impact. Like Instagram, if you draw pictures and you're into art, and not necessarily limited to that, but I'm just thinking of an example. You get so many creatives that are on Instagram, and they use it powerfully. I mean, I think it's a good thing to learn from the world in a wise way, not just learn from the world in all their ways. That's just like, that would be unwise. But I think it's a clever thing to do, or a wise thing to do, is to learn from the world in terms of how we can apply principles that are not necessarily going to undermine our own message, and that's just going to add such a I don't know how to say it, but basically just complement the message that we seek to bring in. And here I can maybe, okay, let me go back to where I wanted to start this off with. Otherwise, I'm just going to get ahead of myself.
Before that, just quickly, just before you go on, we've got another question. So
yes, oh great, yes, yeah.
So Elias, you got your hand up. Please feel free to speak.
Yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have, for some time now, the past few months, I have been posting my devotions on my WhatsApp status and also on Facebook. So, for instance, currently I am going through the Maranatha devotional book. So each day I copy and paste some of the paragraphs from each devotion for each day. So there's been an instance where, and I'm sure maybe some of you have also realized, where Ellen White would write and say, an angel came and showed me this and that. So 2 days back, I came across one of those. I was like, and I was puzzled in the morning. I was like, should I share this? Because I know Seventh Adventists are away. But in my WhatsApp, I have people that are non-Adventist. So I was caught in between whether to do I share this with the public, or should I just share parts of Ellen White's message that do not raise some of those, because I would assume for someone who's not aware of yes, they might say, but because I once got a question on Facebook, an inbox said, who is this angel that you are talking about? So yeah, my question is that how should we handle that? Should we share as it is, or should we, what's your thinking around that? Because I also came across something that commented on the exact same thing yesterday. So I'm just wondering also, what's your take on that?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I recently read something that kind of like challenged my thinking in this specific area, and it's a book that was written about the spirit of prophecy, and it shared a quote of the many quotes that I did share. One quote where she said, like, the testimonies that she had written are for the encouragement and admonition of the church. So those are for church members, etc. And then obviously we have books that she had written, like, the Big Five, that were just as inspired as those testimonies are, but that are of a nature that does not maybe set things, say things in a way that would cause stumbling blocks. And I'm not saying that we should always shy away. I mean, if somebody asks you about your prophet of your church, I think we live in crazy enough times that we can just share it when those questions do come. But I think we need to have some caution, as to what we share with the world, etc. So what I would say, a general rule of thumb is that I try to do, and I try and be very, I'm trying to use my discernment as well when it comes to this, because sometimes she shares stuff really clearly in other places, like in the Review and Herald and the Signs of the Times. Those are also publications that were shared with the world, not just the church, so they went and dished these out on a Sabbath afternoon or whatever the case may be. So some of the statements there also are of a nature that would make it more accessible or less of a stumbling block to people that are not of a Seventh-day Adventist background. So I try and do that. However, there are times when I quote from and share on WhatsApp, because I share on WhatsApp my status or whatever. I just share stuff there, and it's primarily for non-Adventist people. It's good for the Adventists that are on my WhatsApp that can read it and be blessed by it. I'm really thankful for that. But I'm really trying to reach out to people that I can't really talk to. Okay, so I can't really open a discussion with them necessarily. I'm actually hoping to sort of just like throw out my line on my fishing rod and just hope they bite. And I have had that. I've had people ask me questions, so yes, but I don't put out stuff like the angel told me this or that for that specific reason, that I know that, listen, it might be a stumbling block, and this person might need some more time to warm up to the idea that, listen, okay, this is what this Ellen G. White character actually wrote. She's not this bad person that the internet says she is, because that's the other challenge that we have when we minister on social media, is that, listen, we're so bad-mouthed by the ex-Adventist movement and the outsiders, etc., that we've got to keep that in mind as well. So yeah, I just try to avoid things that would be an obvious stumbling block, and then just keep to stuff that are profound and that are really like and gripping, in terms of your personal relationship with Christ or with prophecies, etc. And then as people warm up to this, I believe God will give one, discernment, because you can't hide the fact that she is a prophet and that she had angel visitors, tell her these things. So you can't get away from that. And I think we shouldn't shy away from it completely, but I think we just need to be aware of the fact that we could cause people to stumble when it's not necessary, and we can work around it without trying to make it look like we are hiding the light under the bushel, because that's something we shouldn't do. Some of the churches that are out there, they have all kinds of weird things, and just a prophet and angels visiting someone is nothing for them. But you do also have your more conservative background people that are like, that's where I came from, is like, what? Angels and prophets? I just like, so yeah, yes. So long and the short. Okay. I don't know if that answers the question.
Just before you go on, so we've just to summarize the two questions. I think the question from Joey was around sort of what platforms to use, and then we spoke about which content would be appropriate for the audience we're sharing. We've got one more question from Elder Marcos Cruz, and then I think you can proceed afterwards with, I suppose, the crux of what you want to share.
Yes,
Marcos?
yeah.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity. I personally, I've never been into social media. I'm a very private person. I don't post things on Facebook. I think it's not my cup of tea. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
However, now with the lockdown, it's the only cup of tea, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So even those that are private and they are not, willing to be so much out there, I found myself forced to go and open a Facebook page for work purposes, to rent a place I want to rent. And because otherwise, if you are not digitally out there with the lockdown, practically you don't exist.
Exactly.
So in a way, I'm kind of new to this. I use mostly WhatsApp. I think that's the closest I get into social media. So for people like me, Andre, what are at least the ABCs, the basic things that we need to consider when we are venturing in something we never done before? How can we approach to this? I mean, maybe it's related to the first question. What are the basic things we can do? And number two is, obviously we know in America, in Australia, all these countries, they have very much developed resources around this. Is there a South African-based resource that speak to our context also, that we can go and use to do outreach? Because normally, you know, we go and draw from America or Australia. I want to know if there are local things and where can we access it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Marcos. That's a very important question. I think that's what I hope this discussion will also answer, is exactly what you have asked now, and I'm glad you brought it up here now. I think in terms of the ABCs of social media, I think it's as we get to know social media that we really, for ourselves, for our own purposes, okay, that we see, okay, it's got these capabilities, and we get to know it for ourselves and we get comfortable with it. But I think a really good resource that is out there that I have found for many other things as well is, I just go onto YouTube if I can't find something, or Google or whatever, but particularly YouTube, because then you've got a screen in front of you and you can see what people are actually doing. And I have found that to answer a lot of questions in terms of how things work, the mechanics of a social media platform, etc., etc. So there are a lot of tutorials, is what they call them, out there that you can go and watch if you want to know how something works. So I think maybe that is something that one can look into if this is a total like clean slate experience for you, is just go on and look at you know, just ask questions to YouTube, you know, and it'll you know, pop up various suggestions, etc. So that's something that I have used. Okay, so I can only talk from my own experience. Like whenever I have a question, that's what I do. So the ABCs, that's how I would approach it, is just to go and learn from people that are into that. And that's why I said in the beginning or earlier that I think it's wise for us to learn from the world in a way that does not impede our own message. Like just learning from somebody that's not even a Seventh-day Adventist how to use a certain platform. I mean, that's like obvious. A lot of people do it. But I mean, even the deeper things, if you look at how the world leverages social media to minister to pride, because I mean, that's something that I see a lot when I'm on YouTube, especially. I you know, I don't know, I'm not very big on Instagram and Twitter. I don't know how Twitter actually works completely, but I have used it a bit. But yes, anyway, when I look at all these social media platforms, it's the selfie generation, and this all just ministers to the vanity and the pride of man. And we are essentially, as digital disciples or digital ministries or missionaries, going to try and affect the opposite of this. So where the world uses this to glorify self, we are going to try and use this to share a message that will hopefully glorify God and show man his dependence on God. So that's really hard work there if you're going to do it in your own strength, and we need God's power for that. And that's actually what I want to get to as soon as I answer this other question that Marcos had about the resources. The resources, I'm unfortunately not aware of any resources as it is now. There might be, I just don't know about them. There are many resources when I was in ministry that was like media type of resources, like PowerPoint presentations or videos, etc., etc. So I'm sure that those can be utilized and made to work for the social media platforms. I mean, we really need to get creative, and that's something that I think we have to really keep in mind. If you have a pen, just write this down, is you've got to be creative. God was the one that created man, so he is a very creative person. We see that in nature and everything around us. And as beings that were created in his image, we should be creative as well, creative in how we share this message. And I want to get to So I hope that answers the question about the resources. Oh yes, and another thing about the resources, excuse me, I think, and I hear where Marcus's question is coming from. We always go to America, or we go to this, or we go to that for resources. If you don't see resources and find resources that you are looking for, develop them yourself. Or what I want to have this approach be for this meeting is that you are the resource. That's you. So we can share great presentations, and I'm not saying we should not have and develop resources. But what I want to share in this meeting is that you are the resource, okay? God has done something in your life, and you need to share that, okay? Because nobody can argue with you about that and say, hey, man, that didn't happen, because they weren't even around, kind of thing. So what I'm saying is that you are the resource. This is something that I really, and now I'm tying onto where I actually wanted to start this presentation off, or this chat or whatever, is that was something that I was really confronted with lately. Is like, I just felt like, Lord, what on earth do I have to share? I'm not a doctorate in theology. I'm not a speaker on Revelation and Daniel. I'm not this and I'm not that, and I just don't have anything to share, Lord. Like, why? And I was actually this was at the point where I had already started sharing the videos about the Asterix and Obelix comic and whatever. But I was really thinking, Lord, I really want to share spiritual messages that will be meaningful to people, okay? And I just felt this emptiness. And this emptiness is what drove me to the point that I want to share now. And it's this thing of really getting serious with God. I mean, really saying, Lord, you know what? I realize my dependence on you. I realize that I can't just go out there and share stuff with people if it's not a reality in my life. Okay. And that's something that we have to really be aware of. It's easy to take Daniel and Revelation and go and present it. I mean, your spiritual life can be a mess and you can still be an excellent speaker. Okay. But what I want to emphasize in this meeting is what I said just now, is that you are the resource, okay? If God does not have a living connection with you, then how can you share that vitality with others? Because that's what people are after. I mean, we live in the day of forward messages. I mean, I get so many, and I'm sorry, even spiritual, like even Ellen White quotes. I know I'm not sending quotes. That's why I put them on my status so that people can read it if they want to. They can go there if they want to, but they're not forced to. I don't forward stuff to people unless it's like really like the odd thing. But that's it. So what I'm saying is, we live in an age where every so often people forward you stuff, and it's just an information overload on what's really important and what's really meaningful, for them personally. And I think this is where it really got real for me, is that I realized that, Lord, it has to be real for me. If it's real for me, then the growth will be organic, but the growth will be real as well. I'm not going to be this viral sensation. It's going to be like forwarded and 1,500 likes on Facebook or whatever the case may be. That's not something that we're chasing. We are chasing meaning. We're saying, Lord, what meaningful story can I tell about you? And firstly, it must be real in my life. So I want to just start it off in that sense that Leon asked me to speak about digital discipline and the fact that, we can sit and binge watch flicks while we're doing social media ministry or whatever, or the two is like a bit of a conflict of interest, in that they exist on the same platform, kind of thing. Now, the challenge here is really to get serious with God, not to try harder to please Him, but to really surrender our will to God. That's the bottom line. I just want to share a short little testimony, and then to just communicate this. I'm not just sharing this because I have nothing else to say. I'm sharing this because I really need to. I feel I need to communicate this thought with you. In its important bearing on being an actual digital missionary. Okay, so I used to smoke, believe it or not, but in high school, I picked up the habit from like visiting a friend in Neisner. We went on a holiday or whatever, and he was like the rebel or whatever. And long story short, I started smoking. And a couple of years later, God started changing my life, and soon I realized, this was before Adventism. Soon I realized that, listen, okay, I need to stop smoking. This is like, my body is God's temple, etc., that whole thing. And to cut a long story short, I really tried hard to stop smoking, but I just couldn't. I knew it was God's will to not do this, and I wanted to obey him, but as Paul said, how to obey, to do the good that I know should be done. How do I do that, you know? And that's where this thought of surrender came in. I mean, I tried so hard, but I just couldn't kick the habit. And then one day, God just said to me, like speaking in my thoughts, the thought just came to me is that, listen, you know what? Surrender. Just like wave the white flag and say, Lord, I can't. Help. And then I did that. I said, Lord, okay, I'll surrender my will to you, and then I will do whatever I can do. Like kicking the habit is something impossible for me, okay? But I can take that new pack of cigarettes that's in the cupboard and go and wash it down the tube. And then that's exactly what I did. I did what I could do, and then I trusted. So in other words, in faith, I looked to God to do for me what I couldn't do for myself. And God was amazing. What happened was I had no craving at all. Like after that, the craving just left me and I was clean. Like I didn't have any desire to smoke. So that's just the short end of it. It's a bit longer than that, but the concept is that we need to get to a place where we realize that, Lord, you know what, to fight this spiritual battle that is raging in this world, and you know, in the form of ministering digitally on platforms that have a tidal wave of trash on them that's actually catering to the flesh, the exact opposite. To be able to war in that zone effectively, we're going to have to get to the place where we realize, Lord, we are powerless, and we need to rely on God, and we need to surrender our will, and then be willing to follow the Lord and to obey him, and to, as Moses was reprimanded for not having his house in order when he was on his way to Egypt, the same kind of thing with us. We need to do some introspection, and that's what I had to do the past couple of weeks, especially, was go back and say, Lord, where am I doing something or not doing something that is displeasing in your sight? What can I change, and make that change in my life through this concept of surrendering my will to you, so that I'm willingly now under your discipline, and then you can work in me both to will and to do of your good pleasure. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Leon, if there are other questions that have come in, please just interrupt me, and then we can get to them as we go. But I think I want to.
There was one question that was asked by Natasha. She asked it on the chat group, but maybe I can give her the platform to ask it by herself. Yes. Natasha.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Natasha.
Hi, Leon. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Andries. Thank you so much for your presentation. So I just wanted to know, so my main question is actually, I know that you shared some of the comics and so forth on your YouTube channel. And so my question is actually, do you advocate, animation and comics, like you've used it to illustrate certain points in your presentations on your YouTube? Do you advocate it for ministry? If so, why? And if not, why?
Okay. Firstly, I think animations are like, I view it as like the internet. The internet can be used for good or for evil, and it all depends on you as a person. Personally, I was not using the Asterix and Obelix comics to sort of like advocate for the use of comics per se, so I wasn't specifically maybe saying that, but I realized if I talk about it, then it could be, sort of like taken to mean that. However, that's not the case. I personally, I'm very careful with that, because you've got to remember, when people see comics, they see entertainment. And as soon as entertainment comes up, your brain wants to go in a different zone, and you can't really apply your mind to deep spiritual truths that will change your life if your brain is in a mode to be entertained. Okay, so because entertainment is sort of like the purpose of entertainment, especially as the world has it, is to actually get your mind as far away as possible from that. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have any entertainment. I think there, even the Spirit of Prophecy talks about having, good and wholesome entertainment, etc. But the purpose is not to sort of like put your mind on ice and sort of like just, so you can have a mental vacation or whatever. But so, what I would do is, look, I mean, there are many people that have successfully, I think, used drawings, etc., to communicate a message to people. And I think it is possible. And for that, I'm totally for, to do that. I think that's really good. If I think I like to draw, I like to, do those kinds of things. I don't have the patience to animate those, so cartoons are out for me, but I think we can use that. It's just how we use it that's going to make the life and death difference. I mean, if somebody looks at our stuff and they walk away thinking, that was just a nice entertaining piece to watch, then I think we failed, because then we have not necessarily communicated this message. But if they go back from that and they think, man, that made me think, like, I want to go and look into this, sort of like to just use the Asterix and Obelix comic as a case in point. That comic is obviously written to sort of like communicate entertaining purposes or entertainment to people. But obviously, look, I mean, I didn't really approach it from the perspective that I did. I just started digging into the details that it gave, and then I found that, listen, there could be more to this than meets the eye. So what I'm saying is, so obviously what they're doing is they're affecting sort of like a dual purpose. It's entertainment plus it's communicating this deeper message. Now, I think what we should do is we should have this a tasteful presentation of present truth. And if you can do it successfully with an animated means, etc., then like power to you, as I say. If God has really laid that burden on your heart and you can do it successfully, God's Spirit will guide you. So was there another question, Leon?
Yes, we've got Joey. She's found
Yes.
the hand functionality, so she's raised her hand for another question. Joey,
Okay.
please go ahead.
I'm very proud of myself. Found the hand. Thank you. Now, I just want to hook on to what you just said. God is the creator. God, he is creative, and he's given us a piece of that, of him to us.
Yeah.
And I think what everybody should do is look back at your life, how God has led you, and also look around you where he has placed you. He's led you and placed you in certain circumstances for a specific reason, whether it's animation, you're in the animated world where you can read someone there, or you are in a women's ministry and you can teach ladies potteries, whatever art or whatever ability has given you. It doesn't have to be art necessarily. I think we should be aware of where God has led you and where he has placed you in this time. Like Esther, for a time like this, he's calling us each for a time like this. So I think the connection between us and God, like you said earlier, it's very important. It should be there, because then your ear will be tuned into his voice, and I don't think you will make a mistake if you listen to what and where he's led, because there are very specific quotes from Auntie Iji, where she says that God will work at the end time in ways and means that will be out of the norm, and it will seem as if God is taking the reins into his own hand, and she also warns there will be people that will try to stop that. So we should not do that. We should at all times keep our ears tuned into God, and he's created so many people. His creation is so big, and his creativity has no limits. So let not us limit him where he and how he can use us.
Yeah, I think that's really something that we shouldn't become too orthodox with, is we say, oh, this way is the only way to reach people. No, there's like a million ways to reach them. What we are trying to say here is, listen, let's pray and ask God to really prepare us so that we have a living connection with him, so that we do have something to share with others. And then in that, under those circumstances, to find our voice. I had this, what Joey was sharing just now. I'm going to just read it. I'm going to get a bit ahead of myself here, but I'm just going to put it out there for now. I wanted to speak to this point of finding your own voice. It's finding that specific way that you can reach others and share the message that you have on your heart. And so the thought that I wanted to share was that if you are, let's talk in the context of YouTube just for a moment here. If you are, for instance, thinking of starting a YouTube channel, but you just don't see chance to have this kind of like religious thing going on the whole time, what you could do is start a channel where you share freely in your area of expertise. Okay, so where you start sharing the things that you do know, and if you're an accountant and you can share information in that direction, then do so, or whatever else you might be doing, and then look for ways that you can glean people, as they get to know you, because that's what they do essentially on YouTube, is they get to know you, and by the comments you can chat back and forth, and I think there are times that you're going to say stuff that are going to get people thinking, and this may open doors for you to minister to them spiritually, which is not necessarily the direct purpose of your channel in terms of how they view it, but they look at it and they think, okay, we can sit and listen to this guy, and then they will have to, then they will gain confidence in you as you go to ask you questions about other things in life. I mean, I've seen this a million times on YouTube channels that are devoted to, say, for instance, flying, and this guy's asked questions about life. I mean, what has life got to do with flying in terms of the genre? But that's just how it is. It's just one a unit or a unification process that takes place in people's minds when they associate your confidence in a field with how you live your life, etc. So yeah, that's definitely a thing that we can do. We don't have to all go out and preach directly, but we can do it in a way that is really creative. So definitely use your creativity. I just want to read this to you quickly. It's just a thought that I had, and I'm going to wrap up this whole spiritual preparation part of it, and then we'll get into the sharing some of the fruit of your own experience, etc., and then get to the hardware, software, the gear, etc., the social media platforms of it as well. Okay, so under this digital discipline, I was thinking of the fact that they say that you are what you eat, and the same is true of what we consume in terms of visually, like what we watch. And even the good stuff that we watch should be done in moderation. Okay, so the health laws kind of thing, that's the kind of thought I want to share. Okay, so if we are constantly beholding Christ, okay, and communing with him daily, then it will show, and others will behold your content, obviously, because they are subscribed or whatever the case may be. They're looking at it, and that will reflect, and they will see that listen, this person really has a connection with God, and it won't be so much about glorifying self. It will be about glorifying Christ, beholding Christ, and then sharing that with others. So it's really something that we have to get straight. If you don't have the horse in front and the cart behind it, it's going to be a mess. And I've seen this a million times in ministry, where you want to share something, but your personal life is not necessarily sorted out in the sense that you have a connection. And then what happens is you get burnt out. Okay, and it's not nice, because you develop a distaste for things ministry, and it really challenges you. It's not a nice way to go about it. So cool. So that, and then also yes, and this way of making sure that you have a connection with God will distinguish your specific way of ministering from the noise that is out there. I mean, I get at one stage I got like more than a handful of forward messages from people that are just always sending forward messages. Okay, and I don't have anything personally against these persons per se, but it was just done so to just not break the chain or whatever they said in the forward message, So I think though the people's intentions might have been sincere, and I don't doubt them for a moment, I think it just becomes part of the noise. And here is where I want to sort of like get to speaking to this whole thing of living in this age of forward messages. How are we going to break this, I was going to say, break through the noise? And I think it boils down to having a meaningful something that you share, okay? And to just allow it to grow. It's going to be small in the beginning, and you've got to just keep hacking at it, okay? You will improve, you will learn. I mean, this meeting today is not at all exhaustive or anything. It's just to sort of like prime and answer questions as far as I'm able to, but it's something that we will grow into. And there are many good resources out there, that you can consult. But I think it's something that we, as Christians, that I think we should try and solve, breaking through the noise by having a meaningful relationship with Christ ourselves. Then people will see it and be like, man, I want what that person has, okay? Because that's just, that's the dynamic that is working in the children of the world, if I can put it in that language. When you look at someone that's a very famous blogger or vlogger or whatever, you just think, man, I look up to this person and I want what they have, okay, in terms of worldliness. But the same is true in terms of Christ's kingdom. We should be as salt and putting something tasteful for the out there for the people to consume, and that will only come from a meaningful relationship with Christ ourselves. So yes, I'm gonna leave that there now, and then go to sharing the fruit of your experience. Goodness me, I see we are already down like 10 to 4. So I'm going to really just, I think I've covered a lot of this next section already, just like in a different, like in the stuff that I've already said. I'm just going to ask quickly, are there any more questions? I don't want to just talk the whole time. I want to answer questions actually, because that's when it becomes meaningful and relevant.
Yeah, so at that stage, there's no additional questions, Andries, so you can continue.
Okay, cool. 100%. Thank you so much, Leon. Okay.
Excuse me.
So,
Andries, sorry, just to interrupt you. Sorry, just when I said that, Uncle Simon put on his video.
Cool, no problem.
Uncle Simon, please go ahead.
Yeah.
I did post a question about 10 minutes ago on the list about tracts.
About tracts?
Did you see it? I did post it on the board.
This is now where my kryptonite comes in. I'm not sure how the chat thing works, and I'm afraid that if I, okay, here we go. There we go.
Simon, I didn't pick it up on the chat, Uncle Simon. You mind repeating it just out loud for us?
Sure. All I was asking was, what are current restrictions regarding handing out tracts in public at the moment?
What's just repeat that. What are our current
restrictions? Restrictions. Do we have any handing out tracts in public places?
You mean in terms of the COVID-19 rules, etc.?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what those are. I have not actually looked into those. I actually, for my business, printed flyers the other day, and I haven't even dished out those for the same reason that I don't yet know what the thing, the rules are about that. So yeah, what I would suggest is to maybe speak to someone that like at the church office or whatever, that can really maybe talk to that's more kept abreast of what the rules and regulations are. I'm supposing that there will be something that obviously might restrict it, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the current thing is. For me, there's nothing like a good tract. I totally get that. I was always thinking, in terms of digitally, how we can sort of like pass that on. And I've tried that with, I think the forward message generation has like spoiled that avenue for us all, so that we can't really do that successfully. But I think digitally we can design things that are really catchy and, that will, grab people's interest. I have not really explored this on my WhatsApp status, but this is something I would really want to get into, is this, like, share things on my WhatsApp status that will get people's attention and sort of like ask questions, get them to ask questions in their minds. So yeah, I don't know about the COVID rules, but I just sort of like winged off into another direction, seeing that you spoke about tracts. Sorry, Uncle Simon, I don't have the answer.
Marcus, I saw Marcus, you had your hand up and then brought it down. I thought you wanted to address the question specifically, Marcus. Sorry, can't hear you, Marcus.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, no, I was just raising my hand regarding the tracks. I personally don't know the legislation, but I think if we were to leave in a public place some tracks that people can pick them up, where it doesn't get, where you violate the 2 meters restrictions, then that could be an option. I mean, that is what is happening at the moment. When I go to any store or any professional, they have a stack of flyers somewhere, and then you just take one, without anybody being, more than 2 meters. But if you're going to be standing in a public place, and doing it, then I think it could be a challenge at the moment, considering the legislation.
Marcus, depends how long your arm is.
Yeah.
Put it on a broomstick and put your arm in a broom. Extend it.
Yeah. That was my.
Thanks, Marcos. Thanks for that.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I just quickly want to repeat the adage in Christ Object Lessons. I think I think it's Ministry of Healing that says Christ method alone will give true success in reaching the people. Okay, so he mingled with people as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. And then he bade them follow me. Okay, so the same kind of the same concept is what we're now trying to do in terms of social media. We're trying to find ways to mingle with people so that they can see, listen, we really desire their good. Okay, and we show sympathy to them, we minister to their needs, and we win their confidence. Essentially, that's what happened. I've seen that particularly on YouTube. I've spent a lot of time on YouTube, a lot of time I think that I should not have spent maybe, but I've spent a lot of time there, and I've seen that happen time and time again. People are in a trade, or they are in property, or whatever the case may be. They just win the confidence of their audience so wonderfully because they see a video of you, they see a part of your life, okay, and they're just like, wow, this person is real. And I want to get to this whole thing of being real in a fake world, to sort of latch on to what I've said earlier about this whole thing of, if you have a real relationship with Christ yourself, then you don't have to feel intimidated by the Mark Finleys and the Doug Batchelors and the Walter Fights and the whoever else is there are out there that you think, I don't have that to share. People are not necessarily just in for that. In fact, they are actually looking for somebody that they can really just speak to and share, like what now, kind of thing. If your slot in this rainbow of social media can take up a place where you are the person in the seats, as it were, at a rally, meeting or whatever, where people can ask you questions. I'm just using that in an analogous sense, but to just illustrate this whole thing, that there are so many people subscribed to popular preachers, etc., that you can't really communicate to them or with them directly. And if you have a real experience with Christ, then you can communicate and you can mediate in a certain sense for those that are just coming to it. And I've seen this, and this is a bit getting into how, in terms of practical ways to minister on social media, there's an entire ministry that exists just in the YouTube comment section. I mean, I've seen this, how people just watch a video and they're like, wow, this is really, sort of sparked my interest, or I've got this crisis that I'm going through, and they mention it there, to just have the freedom to say it, and people just get on to them and just start encouraging them, etc., or directing them to good resources, etc. So this is something that, I mean, we were talking about, Marcos was saying about somebody that is really private, that's not really maybe on Facebook a lot, or has the confidence or the desire to be on YouTube in terms of a video presence. You in your own capacity can share and minister to people in a real way, a very real way, and a very important way, in something as simple as the comment section. Just going to watch videos that are made by Seventh-day Adventists and non-Seventh-day Adventists regarding topics that you can glean people from or whatever. I'm not saying that we should just rush and just spam people's comment sections, but what I'm saying is, once again, having a meaningful discussion. And I mean, there's a lot of manslaughter that takes place in the comment section as well, because I mean, it's just people's carnal nature just being what it is, kind of thing. But I think there are also sincere souls that need to be reached out to, and the people that make these videos with the people with a lot, with that many subscribers, they can't get to everybody, so you can really minister to people in that sense. It's a very real, and it's a very simple thing. I mean, and it's nothing to stand back for, so we can really do that. Okay, so I think that was that was kind of like what I wanted to share. So this is basically just under this whole umbrella of sharing your own experience, sharing what's real for you as a person, what you found to be a blessing, and just being creative. And I don't want to sit here and share all kinds of ideas with you and then you just go and try it and it doesn't work. What I'm saying is, go and make time with God and get really serious. Do introspection and really get on your knees and pray. God has got a million ways that you can share his message personally and powerfully, that is going to be specifically catered to you and to your current situation. I think it just came to mind now, when Gideon went out to fight with the Midianites, Ellen White, in that section there, she says the most well-laid plans, I'm just paraphrasing, but the best plans that men ever came up with, apart from the power and planning of God, are doomed to fail, while the most unpromising methods will be successful when divinely appointed and entered upon with faith and humility. And I think that's what we really need in this day and age, is to say, Lord, we'll be humble and we'll be faithful and we'll be believing children of yours, and we will seek out ways to honor and glorify your name humbly, so that you can get the honor and glory, and God will work powerfully. I mean, if you could use a silly little thing like a ram's horn with both Gideon and Joshua in those two instances, then there are many other ram's horns that he has, plans that he has to share with us in reaching other people. Okay. So if you have questions, just stop us. Really, that's the idea of this whole thing, is to actually discuss things and answer questions as best I can. I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying my best. Okay, so now I want to get to the last thing, and that's hardware, software, and which social media platform. I think we've dealt a bit with what social media platform is appropriate. That's really like, basically, I almost want to say up to you, in a sense, that whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever you feel will really communicate your message the way that you really sense God leading you to do so, that's the right one to use. And go and explore. I mean, sit down and take some time and research and find something that can work. And I mean, don't be surprised if you start off on one platform and then find yourself later on, say, maybe 2 or 3, just not too many. Otherwise, you get really thinly spread, unless you have an amazing team working for you when you get there. But you might end up in a different place where you started, and it's only when you start doing things that they actually start having meaning and you start getting direction, etc. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Okay, so hardware. If you have a phone, you have no excuse. so you can start very simply. I mean, not all, but many of the people on, say, YouTube, for instance, started that way. They started just making videos with their smartphone. I know a lady, she bakes all kinds of sweet stuff that, I mean, I think it's so unhealthy. I start developing diabetes just watching it, you know. It's really crazy. So, I mean, it's out of this world. But she started with an iPhone 5. I mean, this was, I think, when iPhone 5 was still a relatively new phone. It wasn't the newest, but it was a phone. She started with that, just videoing all her, you know, recipes. And if you look at her today, you cannot imagine that she started there. And she's got, the last time I checked, and this was like 2 or 3 years ago, she had like 5 million subscribers, and she's probably now at millions more. But what I want to say is, start with what you have. Make that your challenge. That's something that I have done. I've said, Lord, I don't want to spend a dime because I don't have it. But also, even if I did have it, I really want to challenge myself to start with what I have and make it work as far as I can before changing gears, prayerfully changing gears when that opportunity, you know, presents itself, or when you really sense that there is something missing. But just a quick pointer. If you are deciding on going into the video route, they say that sound is more important in terms of when you're looking at upgrading something first. They say generally you can upgrade your audio quality first before your video, because people can still tolerate a grainy image, but you know, audio that isn't that clear is really challenging to listen to. It's really hard because our ears are almost like our hands in the dark. You know, when we can't see the video clearly, we feel with our ears, you know, and I think that's just something to, you know, keep in mind. So yes, smartphone, you start with, you upgrade your mic. I bought 2 little lapel mics from Rode years ago that you can just plug straight into your smartphone, and that makes a huge improvement on the audio quality, because the built-in mics are good, but they're not as good as an actual dedicated mic. But it's not something that should keep you from starting. Okay, so if you have a video camera, then use that as well. I mean, if you're really into that, but keep it simple. Just make sure that whatever you start with does not get in your way. Okay, don't let gear or tech get in your way of actually doing what you sense God leading you to do. Okay, so that's just a very basic thing. And then software, this is, I think, a bit more tricky. There are many simple video editing programs out there, and you can use them depending on what you want to do. If you're just going to do talking head stuff, then I think, you know, you are covered for a big, you know, period of time in terms of what you actually need. But there are more involved video editing software programs that can ask for a significant investment of your time to get to know. Okay, so you've got to decide, you know, how, obviously, like I said, keep it simple in the beginning, and then grow as this becomes something that you sense, listen, this is really, I need to grow in this area. I also want to say, if you are into deciding into going video route, there are many sites where you can have, like, I also want to say, royalty-free stock video footage that you don't have to pay for. You just have to give them credit for, either in your comment, in your description, or whatever way they dictate to you. You can download this, and it's real good video footage, and you can piece together a nice video in that way that would keep people engaged. And you didn't have to go and film that, because you probably could not fly to all those locations, etc. So what I'm saying is, there are resources. If you don't have the ability to shoot amazing video footage, then once again the internet comes to your salvation, in that sense that you can actually find stuff online and make it work for you. You can obviously pay for stuff, and that's maybe at a later stage, or whatever your budget allows for. But those are things, there are ways of doing this. You don't have to just look at your phone and think, man, this is like the only way. You can do audio, for instance. Sorry, I'm just thinking of this now. I have a tablet that I bought a couple of months ago, and I recently discovered that, listen, it's got an amazing screen recording function. And I played around a bit with it and discovered that okay, there's actually several ways that I can use this to make video footage where I don't have to be on screen because I'm communicating something on the tablet, but it does not necessarily have to be a tutorial on how to use this tablet, because that's not what I'm into. I actually want to share a bit more about this or that or the other, and I can do that via the screen recording function. So there again, you look at something and you just sort of like realize that, listen, there are many ways that you can use that to minister or to share. So yes, that's there are many ways, and I think it's just a matter of not feeling intimidated by the learning curve that you'll have to undergo with technology and software, etc., etc. So keep it simple, but keep an open mind and learn as you go. Invest your time wisely and prayerfully. That's the bottom line, so that you don't feel like you've wasted any of your time. Okay, so that's software. I'm not putting this is not a plug for DaVinci Resolve, but if you're looking for insanely powerful video editing software, DaVinci Resolve is software that is like very high end, but yeah, it's got a learning curve. You can do tutorials on that if you want to, but it'll do a lot more than you can maybe use it initially, but it's worth to look at. So yeah, sorry, that was a lot that I said. Maybe I can just end with this. Don't despise the day of small things, okay? Don't look at yourself and think, man, like, where is this going? What is this going to be? Like, I don't have anything to show that whole thing. Don't despise the day of small things. God gave Gideon the command to take that ram's horn and the torches and to go and do what he said. And if it seems silly to us, it makes a lot of sense to God, and that's the only person that it needs to make sense to. But just don't despise the day of small things. God says, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit. That's the bottom line. God is the general. We are just the soldiers in his army. And on social media, it's the same thing. If you get your instructions from him, you will have success in his appointed way. So yeah, that's it. Sorry, I realize we are 12 minutes into injury time, so
no, you're forgiven just because it's Sabbath.
Okay. Right.
But if I could just step back and summarize, Andries, what you shared, and thank you for what you shared this afternoon. I think the first point, and it's quite a pivotal point that you made up front, that I think any ministry that we do must be authentic. It should stem from our personal walk with God. And so I think that should even play out in whatever social media ministry we involve ourselves in, right? I think it's very important that we start off our ministry with a personal relationship with Jesus first. I think there was a second, and I think Joey pointed it out as well, that I think we have the space to be creative. So we've got certain I think skills that we've developed. I know there's some people on this call in particular. I'm looking at Jane, who is an amazing cook, and she just started her own YouTube channel, cooking vegan. And hopefully one day she can invite us all over. So
potluck.
I think it's starting with that authentic relationship, using the skills that we've got, and then trying to be creative with it, and then using it as a platform to spread the gospel. It doesn't necessarily have to be upfront as I suppose preaching, Matthew chapter 24, but there's lots of gospel in a good baked bread, for example, as a starting point. So I think thank you for that. And is there any questions before we close off our call this afternoon? Marcos has a question. Marcos, please go ahead.
Yes, no, I just wanted to add a comment. I think it's also a very important collaboration, because some of us might not be photogenic or, have a specialty in any field, but we are maybe good in the technical side, and it's a question of just partnering with somebody else that has a more facility on communicating in public, so the opportunities are there and the talents are diverse, and it's a question of networking with people that have different talents and
definitely,
I think that is in church especially, You know that.
Yeah.
I think now we are living in a new era in our churches, because I think for many years the online church was just a dream of many of our churches, but today is a forced reality.
It's a necessity.
And yes, so now I think looking at the ministries of our churches, from health to family to pathfinders, there is such a rich of content that we can actually now, put it online. And I think the context that we are here is the local, churches can contextualize it to the need of the local community. That is, I think, where we can become more relevant even. We know what is happening in our community. We know what the needs of our community are. And we have specialists in the field in our communities, and we have an IT department in our church, and I think nothing has stopped us to team up, to actually deliver the message.
Very good point, Marcus. Very good point.
Yes, I actually just wanted to say that. Thank you for mentioning that, because that's something that I left out. I actually thought about it somewhere today. It was exactly that, is that we can collab and make an amazing army, as it were, to present the message. And if you can't do something, there's probably somebody already doing it out there, and you can work together to make it work for you.
Is there any sort of final questions from anybody else before we close?
Can I add? Hi.
Yes, Jane, please go ahead.
I just wanted to also suggest, because it can be a very lonely world, especially when we are starting on YouTube, to maybe start like a digital missionary Seventh-day Adventist community of some sort, where we can actually come and talk about our challenges, especially in the beginning stages. And on that community, we'll have people like Andreas, who has been there to help us, so that this is not just a once-off thing, but a community where we can come and like, oh, so this is how it's done, so that it can prevent some of us who are starting from making mistakes.
Yeah.
Jane, I'm going to challenge you to actually start that group.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing. Because I think if you sense that need, then maybe you are the best person to start that, because you know what you are looking for in such a community. Okay, and you can find or identify the best platform for such a thing to exist, and we can all just join and share. I think something that I want to just say is that time is really something that is very precious, obviously. And I've seen that listen, if you don't catch people in the first couple of seconds from either reading a post or watching a video or whatever, then they just swipe on and they go on. So it's really to catch people initially and to develop that kind of like the method. And we're only going to perfect those things when we start actually doing it and so forth. So that's something that I just wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, and you've been challenged as well. I'm going to follow up on that challenge with you later. I want to just say before we close, thanks again, Andries, for taking the time this afternoon. I think it's been a very useful conversation. As Jane alluded to, maybe a part two, maybe not on this forum, but maybe in another sphere where we can continue this conversation. I think there's many that have engaged in social media ministry as a result of lockdown and find themselves grappling in the dark. And I think it would be useful, as I've challenged Jane actually, to create that platform where those that are involved and started YouTube channels can actually discuss their learning, so that we don't have to all fall prey to the same mistakes, and we can actually learn from one another as we grow. Uncle Simon, I see your hand is up. We're going to give you the last word, and then I'm going to ask Marcos to pray after that as we close.
Thank you. Just to share something, our district 2 weekends ago hosted 8 presentations online over Friday, Sabbath, and Sunday for the public. We had up to 600 or 700 contacts.
Wow.
Health topics with experienced speakers. and it went very, very well. And we're going to follow up at least one program each month on the health-orientated, including finances and family problems and so on. So based on the health message, it's been very successful so far.
Wonderful, Uncle Simon. That's good to hear.
That's great news, yeah.
Marcus, would you mind closing for us in prayer?
Yes, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for the Sabbath day that is always such a blessing for us to rest from the week activities and hear your word and talk different chats of the week, talk about you, talk about your work, talk about your people, pray together and encourage each other, Lord. And indeed, this chat has been an encouragement for all of us. And I thank you for Andries. We want to pray that you continue to bless him in his ministries. We pray also for each one taking part in this chat, that may these points that we discussed may be a starting point for making use of every opportunity that we find in the digital world, even in our own cell phones, in our PCs and computers, how we can share about you, about your second coming, how to share friendship, because there are so many lonely people out there. We ourselves are been suffering throughout the lockdown with stress, with frustration, and even though we know you, sometimes we feel lonely. How much more people without you, Lord? We pray that you give us a sensitive heart, help us to be able to see beyond our needs and be digital missionaries, Lord. Help us to have this real experience with you daily, and help us to share it in every way we can, especially now digitally as well. We pray for the initiative that has been mentioned, Lord, of some of us that want to learn more about digital outreach. We pray that you bless the initiative that we have spoke, that we may be able to interact with each other in another opportunity, so we can continue to empower each other. And Lord, by your grace, one day we can have a baptism out of the fruit of these meetings, Lord. We praise you, we thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
There we go. Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, Andries, and thank you everyone else for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody.
God bless you.
God bless.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye. Have a wonderful Sabbath.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye.